Belford, and today we are going to be talking about rest. And what does that look like, and how does rest make your life, frankly, more freaking awesome? I have been reading this book that is called Sacred Rest by Sandra Dalton Smith, and I am just so excited about it. One, it's a different way to think about rest. She has seven different kinds of rest that she outlines. Some of the things, I'll be honest, in the book, there are times where it feels like, okay, well, that sounds nice to just add more rest all the time into your life. It can feel a little bit impractical at different moments. However, the perspective shift and the way that she talks about understanding that your body might need different kinds of rest and that to restore yourself, it's not just about sleep, it is about more than that. I think that has been really, really interesting. And I try not often to be like really braggy and like, woo, look at me and look how well I'm doing. And this is an area where I'm actually really proud of how far I've come. And I'm like, oh, look at how well I'm doing. It is not an immediate transition that happened. This has been, interestingly, probably a couple of year transition for me to have a life that is more full of rest and more full of margin. By all means, I still have room to grow, but I'm really excited about some of the steps that I've implemented to get to be more restful.
I'm very curious if this, if there is a correlation in your mind, and maybe it's, I don't know, correlation, causation, whatever. Is there a correlation to your journey with perfectionism that has allowed you to grow in this area of rest? Do you think maybe?
I think yes. I think my journey kind of across the board probably correlates with this, that in seeking healing and seeking health in a lot of different ways has allowed me the space to explore rest differently and to not feel like I just have to grind it out. But let me start with what are the seven kinds of rest that she identifies, because I think that will help sort of illustrate a little bit of how it's more than just sleep and I can give myself more of a break than all of these things. So the very first one is physical rest. That one is the obvious. It is that your body has to sleep. Like there is an element of taking time off that your muscles need, your brain needs, all of that. Physical rest is the baseline. She actually says, I don't want to talk about this very much because this is the kind of rest that everybody talks about, is just like sit on the couch, do
Sleep,
nothing,
right.
sleep.
Well, and getting good sleep hygiene, and so we're not going to talk a lot about that today, like sleep hygiene and
Actually, no.
chillaxing.
I was like, we
Uh,
might talk a little bit about that, but really not much. Well, so chillaxing goes into the second kind of rest, which is mental rest. That there is an element where your body needs physical rest, but you also need mental rest. If you think about being just in a you're problem solving all day long, you're having to sort through all of these things, your brain needs a rest. You need to do something to allow it some off time so it can cool down so then you can reset. I want to go through the seven types of rest, and then we'll dig into them a little bit more as we so desire. Uh, Third is emotional rest. That when you are in high charge situations or just this emotional time period, maybe even something, think about like you have a big grief period, or you whatever it is, there is time where you need to emotionally reset and you need to rest emotionally. Fourth is spiritual rest. That is finding like a peace and contentment within your soul. If you're of a faith perspective, that can be finding time to just reflect with your creator, to to rest spiritually and not feel like you are constantly battling and striving. Fifth is social rest, that there are times where this one's interesting. This is a little bit of the introvert extrovert conversation, because social rest can be time with people socially or time away from people socially, depending on who you are and what your needs are. And really, everybody needs a bit of both of those. That sometimes the social rest is being in a circle of friends where you don't have to pretend and you can just be yourself and just be at ease, and that rest that can come with the restoring that restoration that can come with being with people who just accept you for who you are, or that time away from large social groups, especially when you think about you're having to be on, I think about big networking events afterwards. I often have to like whew, reset from all the small talk and all of those things. Sixth is sensory rest. This is taking a break from sensory overload. And I think that in our culture, in our society, there is so many sensations. There's so many things out there. And so if you're in an environment where maybe you work in a place that's loud all the time, you might need to find the opposite of that for a little bit. You need to find really quiet. If you work in a place where you maybe work with small children and you're getting touched all the time, maybe you need to find the opposite of that. You need to find an opposite of what it is, the sensations, to rest from that. This can also be something where she talks about, like, you go to a beach and a beach would not be the beach without our senses. It is not the vacation that we long for. It's the wind on our face. It's the sun on our skin. It's the smell of coconut suntan lotion. It's all of the things, our senses, that help make beach so wonderful for some. Figuring out, is there a way to interrupt your everyday sensations to bring in new stimuli, and that can be a way to kind of bring sensory rest. And then last is creative rest. So when you are being really creative, you can only go so far so long before it feels like, golly, I got nothing else. I writer's block, or everything feels like garbage. You got to turn off. One of my beefs with her book is that I think that there are some concentric circles in these things, and that there's some overlap, mental rest and creative rest, depending on who you are. Those might, and the kind of work you're doing, those might be actually really similar for you. Um, but I love the idea of separating it out. Angela, what are your thoughts? Sorry for all the information all at one time.
Woo. Okay, I need to go rest now because that was a lot.
Yeah,
So wait,
kind
can
of
you
is.
just like list them for us so we have the list ready and available?
Physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest, social rest, sensory rest, and creative rest.
What's interesting about that list is that I feel like you could use that list easily as also you could turn that into your wheel of life. You could turn that into
Mm.
your goal setting and say like, "Oh, what do I want to accomplish and how do I want to rest?" Like it's a very comprehensive list, which I like that about it. Um and I think you're right that mostly people talk about sleep and physical rest. And
I
so
think
let's
the
just
other
start at the
thing that
top.
I was like, I think the other thing that people talk about or think when we say you need rest is, I need a vacation. I need self care. Sure, I'll go take a bubble bath. I'll take a vacation. Why do I still feel overwhelmed, stressed? I think that maybe maybe we take a pause to say, what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve with rest? Because we're presenting some solutions, but really and truthfully, rest is a solution to a problem.
Sammy, this is a lot. I don't know why this is overwhelming me. That probably is an indicator light of something. The fact that I can't seem to like get my brain wrapped around this. What's the point? What are we actually you said we're not hardly going to talk about sleep and and physical rest. Like what's the problem we think we are solving with this episode?
That is a really good question. We probably should have started there. What's the problem? And then go into the solutions. I think that when we think about rest, culturally and society wise, often we think about, okay, well, you just need more sleep. Maybe I don't have time in the day for that. Or, fine, I've allocated more time for sleep. I took a vacation. I'm still stressed. I'm still overwhelmed. I still feel like I'm burning out. And this pace is unsustainable. And I think that that requires a little bit of self-awareness to be able to notice that the pace is unsustainable. Two, it could be that you're trying to figure out, how do I be less overwhelmed and less stressed out all the time? One of the ways is to make sure that you're getting good rest. And that is more than just 8 hours of dark sleep at night. That is making sure that you are giving your brain time to reset, that is making sure you're giving your community and relationship mind to take a moment for itself. There are a lot of different ways that you can engage in rest. And I love the way you said it, where it's the wheel of life, and that in any of these given areas, you might rate yourself at different levels. So when you're saying, wow, I'm a perfect 10 on physical rest, and yet I still don't feel it. I still wake up tired. I still can't get through the day without so much caffeine. Whatever that might be, there could be another area of rest that you're neglecting that is impacting how you go about life.
Well, and I think that I want to throw what I think might be a controversial topic in the mix, because I celebrate and love that I have ADHD, and I will tell you one of the ways that feels unrestful to me is boredom. And
Mm.
I know that I talk about in my book that we should cultivate boredom sometimes, but even there are times when I have been going crazy speeds. So this is going to feel like the antithesis of what you just said. So I'm going at work, and then I just stop at home, and the work that I'm doing may not be feeding a piece or a part of what you were talking about, especially with the emotional health or the creative or something, or even the spiritual. And so here I'm like, oh, well, that's good, because I'm like going to chill out on the couch. I'm going to do nothing, except then I'm bored, and I actually haven't fed my brain the social interactions that I need. I haven't fed my brain creativity. And that creativity could just be even going and watching a beautiful sunset and being like, whoa, check out all those colors. Right. So I could see how we could pendulum swing from the crazy busy to, oh, I should do nothing. And doing nothing might actually not be the rest you need. That might be some physical rest, but it may not be. I think what we're kind
Yeah.
of hypothesizing here is that it may not be. I am I have some people have called me a talkative introvert. And people that have known me for a long, long time, and I thought that was crazy town, because I love people, but you're right, you do need a little bit of both. I need to have some good social interaction, but I also need some good alone
Well,
time.
and I think that even when you think about what are the things that you're feeling into your life, you're absolutely right that just if I'm going really fast, sitting still and doing nothing, it's like it is boring. I don't want to. I don't want to just sit and do nothing. How can you engage in a restorative activity that is
Yes.
something that can bring more life and bring energy and joy and just a sense of peace and contentment, even if it's not sitting still and
Right.
going to bed at 8 p.m. and doing
Right.
these things, like there are ways that you can restore yourself. You think about that really good conversation with a friend where you just talked for so long, and oh my gosh, I left that just feeling so at peace. Like I needed that for my soul. You think about those moments, like that's rest. And we don't
Mm.
always call that rest. We don't think about that as the thing that we need to restore us and the thing that we need to bring us back to fullness.
Well, and to that point, I have always thought of myself as an extrovert, because I do love people and it fills my tank. But what I learned a few years ago is that if I go to a networking event and I flit and all I do is small talk, then I will be exhausted. It will
Right.
make me tired. And but I've learned that if I will stop and have, and at a networking event that's an hour long, if you stop and have like a 10-minute conversation with somebody and you really like learn about them, like last night I was learning about how someone who almost died, I'm like, tell me, and that inspired them to start a nonprofit. I'm like, tell me that story. And
Yeah.
so yes, I will be inviting her on the podcast. She was awesome. But I felt so restored having had a really good deep conversation with her, where I could really connected. And then I did a little bit of flitting, and I had one of the people that I've known for apparently 18 years. He was telling us that he had moved here 18 years ago. I'm like, crap, I remember when you moved here. So that's funny. Um, and so anyway, you can even like, I think I had to adjust because I thought, oh, I'm needing social interaction. So I'm just going to go get social interaction. And then I figured out, no, 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 I have to have a certain kind of social interaction. I went to a birthday party a couple of weeks ago and I didn't meet a bunch of people, but I ran into a friend that I never get to see in person. We talked for probably 20, 30 minutes. And it was, the rest of the night, I was just fine to like anybody I met or didn't meet. I didn't care because that was really deep and connecting. And I think we have to figure that out for each of us.
Yeah.
But that's just social. So, what are some ways that you have grown other areas in figuring out rest?
So, one of the ways that I want to talk about, because I hadn't really thought about it before, is sensory rest and thinking about how are you engaging with or resting your senses. And so, what's interesting is that engaging with all of your senses can be a form of rest. So, if are, you want to experience both not hearing things and hearing things. Like, you need both. You need silence and you need sound. Have mm, Depending on what your workday might look like or what your all of your time looks like, you might need to engage in the opposite of that outside of that. You need to try experience the full range of your senses. And so for me, with small children, I get touched a lot. And there are times where I hit that sensory limit and I'm like, no one can touch me now. I also will hit sound limits where nobody can talk to me anymore. Nobody can make a sound. I need everything to be silent because I peeked over and that's it. I'm done. It is interesting to think about. I get overwhelmed with smells. Too many smells or too intense of a smell for me,
Oh,
like
big
I'm
time.
out. I can't.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite things is when people like shove something up to my nose and say, "Smell this," and I like immediately hold my breath. I'm like, "Nope, don't do it. I'm not holding," and I can't. I think a little bit of that comes from a mint allergy, and that every now and again somebody will just shove something peppermint in my face and say, "Isn't it smell so good?" I'm like, I am allergic. Please don't make me smell that. So I don't smell things when people ask me to.
I
I
have to
like to,
prepare myself to go into certain fragrance shops and candle shops and
yes,
such. I have to like mentally prepare for it to be overwhelming and I need to get in and get out.
yes. And for some people, that's not overwhelming. And for others, it can be. And so there is a part of it that I may not need to go take a nap after my toddlers have been touching me for too long. What I need is sensory rest, not physical rest.
Mm,
And if I responded by saying, like, well, great, I'm just going to go to bed earlier and that will make me feel better tomorrow, not really, actually. What
right.
will make me feel better is having some sensory rest. And then I love the idea of engaging with your senses in a different way. So find ways to be creative. This is a little bit goes into the creative rest combining with other things. We had Corinna on here to talk about the sand tray therapy. I think that there is a part of that that is a different sensation to play with the sand, to feel it on your hands, and to engage in that very tactile activity. There are other things you can do, laying down in the grass and grounding, feeling the way the grass feels around you, like taking a moment to notice on purpose, how does this feel on my skin right now? What does it smell like? How does the warmth of the sun feel? How do the raindrops feel on my skin? Those kinds of things in sensory rest, I think, really struck me of how to be on purpose about giving my five senses engagement and rest. And I think maybe I just felt really seen in that in this season of life because Angela, I would imagine you probably aren't touched out like I am.
Mm-mm.
But you remember being touched out.
Mhm. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I had three under five, five and under. And yeah, no, I can definitely remember being like, please don't touch me. Like, I also weirdly, that actually started with my having a child because I have been historically a very touchy feely person. And then I got pregnant and it was like, do not, like, you couldn't touch me when I slept. You couldn't touch me when I was we take these Lamaze classes and they're supposed to touch to see when the contraction's coming, and I slapped a nurse, don't touch me, while I was having a contraction anyway. So yeah, there are certainly different times. I think I want to also talk about the idea of being really gentle with yourself, because you may find things that cause you to feel unrestful. I figured out that visual clutter really makes me anxious, and so I don't love when my house is just cluttery. Like on Fridays when you've just got the week, everybody's left the mail on the counter and the this, and I have to like take a minute and like clean the counters so that I can lay on the couch without seeing visually something that is. And I couldn't figure that out for a long, long time. I couldn't figure out why I don't like just being in my house. My friend finally was like, visual clutter makes you crazy. And I was like, oh my word. And the key was to not judge myself that was bad. It was just an awareness and something I learned about myself. And at different seasons, like right now, if I walk out into my kitchen, it is kind of a mess. And it is like, you know what? This is bothering me. I'm going to take care of it instead of, oh, why don't you pick up every day? So being gentle with yourself, I think it's not technically, I guess it's a mental and emotional form of rest, of being kind and gentle as you find these things. And why can't you just get your crap together? Well, no. Why can't I just rest in the way that I need rest so that I can navigate the world in a more gentle way?
Yeah, and we've talked about the visual clutter before, and I don't think I've ever connected. That is a form of sensory rest. Your vision is a
Mm,
sense,
I
and
didn't either. That's
it
beautiful.
is part of, I was like, it is an element of sensory rest. And golly, apple does not fall far from the tree on that one. I'm the same way, that visual clutter is just, it can be difficult. And it's not always. There are times where, like,
Right.
whatever, it's no big deal. And then there are days where it's too much. It's too much. I can't handle it anymore. And now I'm yelling at everybody because there's a piece of paper on the counter.
And there are
And you're
days I
like,
walk into your house and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get my own needs met by tidying up your
mhm,
kitchen, and
yeah.
with no judgment, because that's the thing, is that I'm never judging. It's just it's bothering me. I'm going to load the dishwasher. Also, most of the time, it's not that it's bothering me. It's that I see you and go, oh my gosh, I remember what it was like to have two little kids. How lovely it would have been to have a gift of somebody to just come in and load the dishwasher without comments or without making a statement. Or I do
Hmm.
harass the crap out of my kids about their cars and throw away the trash. Can you just throw away the trash? Like, I don't know why I can be non-judgmental in so many areas of my life, and when it comes to people's cars, I'm like, and my it's not like my car's always clean, but I just like, the trash, just throw away the Chick-fil-A wrappers, please. Anyway, sorry. I need to be more gentle. And some of the time I do just clean up the cars and throw it in the trash. And I try really
So a
hard.
different form of rest to help save you there from
Thank
the
you.
hole you're digging. That is complicated, and I don't know that I'm still exploring the concept of it. Is spiritual rest
Mm,
and finding rest for the soul. This one to me is a little trickier to think about because, I can think about, okay, cool, sensory rest. What am I doing to feed my senses, to give them
mm.
rest? Like, there can be tasks I can associate with that. Spiritual rest is like, okay, great. Um, Spend time in prayer or meditation. Yeah, that's about all I got. That's what I got for what to do for
Well,
spiritual rest.
no matter what your faith perspective is, there are a number. Most world religions have a concept of work 6 days and rest for one, at least, right? And so, specifically, Judeo-Christian values are absolutely, we're supposed to have a Sabbath, a day of rest, and so. Um, with that, spiritual, I think, is about connecting. And so it is, yes, prayer and meditation, also just paying attention to your soul, seeing it, figuring out where is it not feeling connected. um
Mm,
and recognizing we are made in the image and likeness whatever your faith perspective most agree that there is divine in each of us. In my faith tradition, that is, that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And that means that there's a connection to divine that will help, I think, our spirit and our soul, and recognizing the eternalness and the the seasons of life and the circle of life. I think I think it could be fun to even watch Lion King as a it's kind of a fun, like, recognition of spiritual rest. I don't know. You can cut that, cat.
I also think that in that paying attention to your soul and connecting to that, there's a time for reflection that
Hmm.
if you are going too hard, too much, avoiding, when you think about sometimes that like running, constantly running and striving, there is an unwillingness to reflect and to see what is going on within you. And that moment where you can sit quietly with yourself, with your creator, and just be is really, really beautiful and really, really intangible. It's not a way that you can tell somebody exactly how to do it. There's not a formula of how you can get there, but if you can get there, that rest can be really beautiful and just permeate a lot of other things. When you can look at yourself and accept yourself for who you are, and that doesn't mean that you don't want to grow and don't have goals, but accepting what is and being able to reflect and look forward, there's an element of that that does take rest. It takes a slowness almost that is just not often associated with, or it can't be easily found in the everyday running and going of things. And so spiritual rest, I think, is one that we don't often make time for or think about if we're not being really intentional.
Love it. All right, Sammy. Last thoughts. What do you got to leave us with?
I think that rest matters. Rest is not something that I want you to add to your to do list. I want you to think about it as a way of being.
Hmm.
And how can I have my day more restfully? How can I live my life in a more restful way? Thinking about how to have smooth moments of rest. How can I prioritize myself? Because you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help others. And when you are empty and dry and are not being restored and refilled, you can't continue to pour out for others. And so make the unselfish decision to fill yourself up with rest, even though that can look selfish, to prioritize yourself. It is an unselfish act to contribute to the world. So, if you'd like, you can go read the book, Sacred Rest.
She also has a podcast.
She has a podcast. You can also find other books on rest. Honestly, this is not, I don't even know that I agree with everything that she has to say about rest. However, the on-purpose act of exploring what does rest look like in my life, I think that's the key. That's the on-purpose point of this. And really and truthfully, isn't that the key to a freaking awesome life? Is it's a lot of intentionality, doing things on purpose.
Love it.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope you guys go be freaking awesome.